Well, that was stupid. Um, all right, should be fine now. I apologize desperately about that. Oh man, I'm getting absolutely owned in the chat. Blood was yapping to nobody. All right, thanks, man. Fair enough. Oh, okay. So, well, that did happen. I'm just gonna quickly tweet out about this, and then I'll go back to explaining what the hell I was talking about, very, very shortly. Okay, that's tweeted. Sorry, so I had to actually just have a look at obviously the Chelsea game, so I watched that. Microphone volume, yep, equals Sterling. Yeah, yeah, microphone volume is Sterling points this week. That's a good one. Okay, so let's just review my week first. So that I'm a bit more organized. I was basically watching the Sterling blank, but as you can see, obviously it actually helped me out because Sterling getting 0 points means it's effectively +0 at least, at the bare minimum. And yeah, I mean, one thing I want to say obviously is if I was intending to wildcard as soon as I did, I probably would have done Taylor to Morris and then actually benched Sterling, which would have meant that I would have taken the -2, but I also would be at least 6 points up due to Morris if you take if you take into account the -2. Um, so that's one situation, and yeah, I mean ultimately it is what it is. I think the Dallo move was good. I'm actually quite happy about owning Dallo, and I will own Dallo on the wild card. I think that's for sure. The issue, of course, is I no longer have any patience for my United players. Um, and part of that was inspired due to, first of all, one free transfer left. Saka, probably going to be a transfer out to Son. And then Rashford, who I would also ideally like to transfer out to another player, which is probably going to be Madison. Just because we're starting to see now Rashford not even playing consistent left wing, an early sub for him, which is disastrous. Yes, of course, you probably expect better minutes over the next two games and much more easier opponents. But I think the way I see it now is I can just pick another team with similarly tough or sorry easy opponents, and then just go with a wild card there. As far as Julian Alvarez, because I invested so quickly into Julian Alvarez, I do need to make some sort of considerations in terms of whether I want to go into Watkins. I think Watkins obviously had the whole of his absolute life. Maybe the Liverpool one's comparable, but I'm not 100% certain on going for Watkins at this moment in time. As I said, so I have created a wildcard video. There are two drafts. There is a Julian Alvarez draft and there is a Watkins draft. And another thing to think about too is, let's say, I think it's really nice if, let's say, Saka gets a price drop sometime during this week, to be able to go from, let's say, Son and Madison into Odegaard and Saka, because they're both going to be worth 17.2, right? Or sorry, I am probably smoking something here. 17.1, apologies. So Saka, if he gets another price fall, which would put that sort of position equal, would mean two free transfers in game week 10. If I, let's say, wild card now, which I am, means that I get those two players in, just replace the Spurs players. Now, some people would also argue that Son is a season keeper, or vice versa, Madison. But either way, I need a way towards Saka. So actually, if I go for a Julian Alvarez draft, what would be nice about going for Julian Alvarez is I get more money in the bank, and I therefore have the flexibility to, let's say, maybe keep a Madison, maybe go Son to Saka, or do the exact opposite where I keep Son, and then actually have enough money in the bank to actually go from Madison to Saka, something like that, which would be on my mind. So I regret selling a stupid. But let's actually go for the chat. I mean, obviously there was a wave of questions. I think the first question actually was sent in before I even opened up the live stream. That question was, let me just quickly have a look. So that question was, in Game Week 10 and Wildcard in Game Week, sorry, actually kind of confused what's going on here. So he says he was planning to bring in Salah for Game Week 10 and Wildcard in Game Week 19. But now that he looks at his team, there are 6 or 7 changes. And should he wildcard or not? So I think obviously the first question to ask is, what are those 6 to 7 changes, right? Because let's say if you own Madison and Son and you have 6 to 7 changes, maybe there's actually not too many changes to be made. It just depends on what it is. For example, even if you own Pickford ahead of Bournemouth, I think I'd be pretty happy owning Pickford if I'm honest. But yeah, like if for example Pickford is one of your changes, I don't think he needs to be moved on immediately. Those kind of things need to come into your consideration. So I would say, do you see, for example, over the next 5 to 6 game weeks, a huge gulf between the team? And then on top of that, obviously from a game week 8 sort of pure perspective, are you going to get a huge amount of upside just from game week 8? So that's the first question. And then Soldier Boy says, hey Fran, how are you? I'm doing good, thank you. Enjoy that Sterling 0-pointer. Is it better not to activate wildcard? Absolutely. I think if you plan to wildcard, always wildcard, on the night of that sort of post deadline, right? Because what I did is the same thing. I did it on Saturday. So watched United play, watched Liverpool and Spurs, and then I reacted, to be quite honest. So that's that. Janks, nice to see you around. A bunch of no sounds. Fran doesn't want to share trade secrets. All right, now questions. Colwell to the moon. Yeah, I mean, great game for Colwell owners, wasn't it? Evening. Nice to see you, Meerkat. Sold Watkins for Alvarez. Yeah, I know. A lot of people sold Watkins for Alvarez in game week 6, wasn't it? Or even earlier. And then what about Richarlison? Richarlison. I don't think it's close. I think Madison's the guy, basically. Ahmed's in the chat, so I'm gonna I think Ahmed is basically a good friend of mine. He's gonna be a monitor now. So you've got the rights now to put people in timeout. But yeah, game week 7 review. In terms of my actual team, obviously a massive stinking fart. And then there's Luton and Burnley to go. So actually, probably one team might get a clean sheet. And who knows, Carlton Morris might haul again. Not many people own Burnley attack in any form, so that's not going to hurt me. Ultimately, I think it's Kabore. I'd probably prefer Burnley scored, and I don't even mind if Burnley get a clean sheet. So some people get some Bayer clean sheets, but that's really about it. I don't think it's going to massively impact my rank. I'm probably, right now my rank is 263,000. I'm probably expecting my rank to drop again to maybe, let's say, 350,000 worst case scenario. And we'll see what happens after that. But I'm okay with the team now. In terms of the wildcard draft, obviously this is just to sort of bag price rises and falls because if we quickly look at price rises and falls, Burn, Trippier, Bowen set to rise. I don't think I'm going to touch Bowen, so I don't really care. And I don't think he's going to double rise, but I might think about getting into Bowen. Maybe obviously Eze is a good position to sort of trade up. As far as Chilwell, Saka, already sold them a while ago. Chilwell before, and then Saka this week I've sold him. Saka, I'm not sure if he's actually going to fall, to be honest, but it would be really nice and really elegant if Saka fell to 8.6, because as I said, that would sort of make them level on price for what I own, or what I would be owning these Spurs players at, because once I make a decision between Watkins and Alvarez, and actually I could obviously go for a 3-4-3 draft as well, that's another consideration to make. But yeah, a couple things I think what I'm going to do with this review stream is, first of all, probably look at actually just reviewing all the games, what I think about all the performances this week in the context of the first 7 game weeks as well. So Aston Villa, Brighton, when we look at that sort of fixture, I think Aston Villa obviously overperformed. Their XG was less than 2. Watkins, as I said, overperformed the most. But you can still kind of see that players like Diaby, Watkins, and Cash, I think, are going to be essential. Whether you wildcard all 3 of them, Game Week 10 is a different point. I think they would be nice on a Game Week 10 wildcard. Another question you want to ask yourself is, on a Game Week 8 wildcard, do you go for all 3? I think the question mark is going to be on Diaby just because of the sort of injury conundrum, which I believe Emery sort of explained that actually he might be fit for the future game. So I think he should be fine. He should be rested, obviously, for the European game, and then actually we should see Diaby back in action, but probably with less minutes versus Wolves. And now, obviously, we'll talk about Wolves later on, but Bournemouth Arsenal, I think Bournemouth, it's an interesting thing because obviously Iraola was sort of brought in to be an attacking manager. And what we knew from last season was that Gary O'Neill did some incredible work, with this Bournemouth team in terms of leveling up their attack. And I haven't seen really much of a change from this Bournemouth team so far. If anything, obviously they look a bit weaker because they've lost a few key players as well over the summer and probably not really strengthened with, I would say, experienced talent. And they actually look like a team that's very easy in terms of actually getting clean sheets consistently. Now, they actually probably should have scored in the Chelsea game last week, but when I look at this Bournemouth team, I mean, they just scream free clean sheet to me. Now, Arsenal obviously extremely comfortable, and we've talked about how Rice has improved this team. So I think if I'm wildcarding this week, even though Arsenal have two, in theory, bad games on paper, I definitely like holding a defender or holding even a keeper. So I've mentioned on Twitter that I actually really like Raya, and I'll talk about Raya in a second. Everton Luton, a little bit of a shocker of a performance. Like I don't think that I was expecting Luton to never score a goal ever again, but Everton at home conceding two was shocking. Everton, I think, really racked up around 4 xg, and they only scored one, so they're sort of finishing woes continue. Man United Crystal Palace, just another shocking performance from United, where I think they actually lost on xg again. Couple of instances where, you know, one or two sort of ball bounces and things like that could have improved the game for United, but still really terrible performances in a situation where they need to perform, and ultimately they didn't. Newcastle, Burnley. One thing I'd like to say actually about Burnley is we sort of initially set our expectations saying that Burnley, Sheffield United, and Luton are terrible. What I'm starting to see now from data wise is Burnley's probably not that bad, and expectedly that's probably why actually Newcastle at home only getting two versus Burnley shows that Burnley is a pretty respectable team. I think Bournemouth and Fulham are worse teams than Burnley, particularly from a defensive point of view. So when we're looking at teams to target in the future, I think definitely Luton and Sheffield United first, and then actually looking at teams like Fulham. For example, tonight, this Chelsea team probably could have scored 4 goals quite easily, and the chances were very, very easy to get in the first half. Now, Fulham obviously improved in the second, but look, I mean, Fulham are probably going to end this match day close to, let's say, Luton Town or Sheffield United at the bottom of the table when it comes to XGC. So it already shows how poor they are as a team and why you want to target them. And I have obviously just roasted Bournemouth as well, but they might just be a little bit better than Fulham, but that doesn't really mean anything. And then Burnley, I would actually say, honestly, they're quite a promising team, and I'd say the same thing about Wolves as well. Now, it's easy to say that now that Wolves have good results, but what we did say, obviously, even in Game Week 5, was that Wolves was one of the few teams that was actually in that quadrant where they were actually close to being a good attack, right? So the data is continuing to improve. Now, my issue with Wolves is that the team strength and the player quality is, of course, quite low. I think Neto is clearly their best player, and we're seeing it and looking at Neto, particularly on wildcard windows, you know, asking the question of whether he can be a good pick. I'm a little bit unconvinced as to Neto just because I think the quality of the people that he's playing with is really poor. And so when you're looking at, let's say, him and his stats, he is more expected assist dominant, right? And in those sort of situations where I think you've got a poorer team strength, it is probably going to bear out that you're going to also finish a little bit worse than usual. And so I think that's my main concern with him. Whereas when you compare it to Eze, who's obviously a little bit more expensive, the difference is Eze is very expected goal dominant. So even though a lot of people see Eze as a creative player, the difference actually is that Eze is also taking a lot more shots. And so hopefully that would bear out on a wild card better for Eze than, let's say, Neto. But I completely recognize that 0.6 is a huge difference in terms of transfer value. Going forward, West Ham as well. Decent performance for Sheffield United. Probably could have also scored 3. Ward-Prowse also should have got an assist. I'm still not 100% sold on Ward-Prowse just because I'm a fixtures person, and Newcastle and Villa are just tough games, right? Look, yes, of course, Newcastle at home, but then Aston Villa away, just bad fixtures. So the way I see it is I would rather wait as a Game Week 8 wildcard or invest into some of the players around those price points and then actually save enough money in the bank if I want to go into West Ham by then into Game Week 10 and sort of look at these players. As far as Nottingham Forest, I think they're one of those bad teams, just around the sort of level of Bournemouth and Fulham as well, but probably have a little bit more bite in terms of attack just because of the overall quality of the squad in of itself. And then Brentford have been horrible the last 2 games, but I also think that we shouldn't overreact. They're definitely, you know, more towards the bottom half of that sort of top half, but I would not say that Brentford are a team that look awful. I think it's the time to move away from Brentford assets if you want to on a wild card, but it's not a must. And ultimately, Brentford still scream a lot of value because Mbumo could have very well gotten a penalty in that game, and it shows you also the value of having penalty takers. Fulham, Chelsea, nothing too much to talk about. I've already sort of roasted Fulham enough, unfortunately. And then Chelsea, we'll see what happens with Caicedo as well, because I think he's someone who obviously improves the level of the squad. For example, if they play Ugo Chukwu Nick's game over Caicedo, I think there's a huge drop off. It kind of reminds me of the Bournemouth game. Cole Palmer's nice. Mudryk seems to be injured. And then obviously Broja, I'm not sure if he actually re-injured himself, but those are things that we have to think about. Jackson will come back to the team. I just don't think there are any serious Chelsea assets. You could obviously, let's say, create a wild card, with Colwill, play Colwill versus Burnley away. But when's the next time you're going to play Colwill? It just doesn't seem possible to play a Chelsea player until effectively game week 15, right? Because if you look at the fixtures here, yeah, I mean, sorry, game week 16 really versus Everton. So I wouldn't be touching a Chelsea asset until then. The run of fixtures is too bad, and you just need to cut ties with your Chelsea players. All right, so let's just quickly look at chat. So Ahmed has some privilege. Son over Saka for me. No, I see what you mean in terms of Son over Saka, which is why also I like the idea of actually having flexibility to go from Madison to Saka if it's even at all possible for me to do that. And we'll sort of look at a wildcard draft in a second, because obviously you guys know the two structures that I've been talking about, and I'll look at that in a moment. Ray says, what are your thoughts on having a wild card without Salah and having Trippier in a strong midfield? I think it's viable, but you know what's interesting about Salah and Haaland is I think I can still create a balanced squad that I think I'm happy with, and I would probably be captaining Salah, Son, and Haaland this entire run, and no other player is coming into my mind as a captaincy option, except for maybe Saka versus Sheffield United at home in Game Week 10. So the way I see it, and this would be so nice if I could just show Haaland fixtures as well, but I would definitely cap Mo Salah on Game Week 9, even though Haaland has a good fixture as well. I mean, you could also captain Haaland versus Brighton, because obviously Brighton look like a horrific side, but I think also don't overreact too much. I think this is a very good captaincy for both, and if anything, just shows the strength of owning both on these two fixtures. As far as Game Week 8, obviously, since I'm wildcarding into these players, I'm still going to go for a Haaland captaincy over Salah this week, but the reality is I have Son versus Luton, so I will be going for Son this week. Game week 10 is a very, very clear Salah captaincy, and as I said, the alternative option is going for Saka, which is why maybe moving away from Son to Saka in game week 10 is something that's on my mind, just so that I can think about whether I prioritize the Arsenal captaincy that much. Because the thing about game week 10 is right after game week 10 for Arsenal, you've got Newcastle away, which is obviously going to be a very, very tough game, but benefiting from Sheffield United at home from a very, very good team like Arsenal is nice. The reason why I'm moving away from, for example, United midfielders is because even though they've got Sheffield United away themselves, which is obviously not as nice as home, the simple reality is their attack just doesn't seem like they're actually building enough chances where I can say it makes sense to hold on to those assets, because in the meantime, I can just bank on Son and Salah. Salah, for example, even in some of these toughest games so far, I mean, he's been ridiculous, Salah. I don't quite understand it. He's basically 2.5 times the creator he ever has been in his career. Now, obviously, he's no longer the same goal threat, but you are now looking at a time and place where Salah is actually probably going to have more access to bonus points than he's ever had before, which is because he is now so much more creative than he ever has been. Now, as far as Son, as I said, we'll be captaining him on game week 8. But then if we look at captaincies again, game week 11, this is probably going to be a Haaland captaincy, because I do think Bournemouth at home and away is so important for me. I always back the home fixture. Unless for a magical reason I'm looking at, let's say, Arsenal clean sheets away, but I'm just kidding. The Bournemouth home fixture there makes me want to go Haaland in that captaincy. Someone's actually given a donation, so I'm just going to respond to that really quickly. Thank you so much to the Rational Biohacker. Foden for Diaz. Man City look iffy without Rodri. Look, I think it's a good time to sell Foden 100%. If you already have Madison and Son, then fair enough. You can actually probably go into Luis Diaz. I think that's quite an interesting punt at the very least. What I will say, of course, is that probably Brighton isn't the best game on paper, but I still like it. And keep in mind, of course, that he might actually go on international duty right on game week 9, which would actually maybe impact his minutes on game week 9 when he comes back. So that's the only thing I would say. Maybe have a think about that. I haven't really looked at the Colombian fixtures and what the turnaround is on game week 9. So do take a look into that first before you invest into Luis Diaz. And another question I would say is in terms of, you could also think about downgrading from that Foden position, because in theory, right, we're probably not going to own Bowen until game week 10. It's a decent opportunity to, let's say, jump onto a very, very good Eze fixture. Or if Diaby's fit, you can always just go for Diaby as well. I do think, though, however, ultimately, it's a good time to just go off of Foden. But in terms of, let's say, going back into talking about captaincies, right, and why I really value Salah so much is game week 12, I'd probably captain him there as well. Just because this is going to be a Chelsea away game for Haaland. Now, obviously, Haaland is fixture proof per se, but I'd still be happy to captain Salah in that fixture. And so there's enough fixtures there for me between, let's say, game weeks 8 and 12 in particular, where I would strongly consider not captaining Haaland, but I would still keep Haaland in my team because he's actually that good of a pick. So that's my opinion. Now, obviously, you can create a very balanced squad, and I will create a Holland-less squad as well, just for the sake of it here. In fact, I'm just going to catch up with a little bit of the chat. So Anka's here. Nice to see you. Nice to see you around. Obviously, this is a nice time for you, fortunately. Got Cabroy only to free up funds for Salah, but you wish you didn't have Estupiñán first on bench. Yeah, I mean, I had him first on bench, or yeah, and I got away with it, unfortunately, or fortunately. Fran, what are your thoughts on? Yeah, I think I've answered Ray's original question. I think the thing about Trippier too is I would actually probably be interested in investing into a Liverpool defender, someone of the quality of Trent Alexander-Arnold or Robertson over Trippier, just because the fixtures are there for Liverpool as opposed to Newcastle. Because if I switch back over to, let's say, Trippier, yes, of course he's been amazing, but West Ham away is pretty poor. Wolves away seems to be, getting worse as a fixture just because we probably are starting to respect that team a bit more. Arsenal's a bad game. Bournemouth is fantastic. Crystal Palace at home is fantastic as well. And Chelsea at home is probably, borderline fantastic. But fixtures here they're not anything at the level of, let's say, Burnley at home or Sheffield United away. So I'm not that concerned about, having to jam Trippier back into my draft. So that's the only thing I would say on Trippier for the time being. As far as my take on Foden, I think I've responded to that. I think Foden to Maddison is very, very simple as a move. Whether you do it for a hit is probably another question. I think you can do it for a hit, but obviously, you know as well intuitively that should pay out, let's say, over game weeks 8 to 10, hopefully for you, as opposed to, let's say, immediately. But I think it is a logical move. Gothic Van Life, thank you very much. Yeah, if you guys could like and subscribe, that would be lovely here. Ben Taylor says, hi, Fran, nice to see you. 3x City, 2x Arsenal, only 1x Spurs plus Botman, Sterling, and Pickford has sold me on a wild card. I think that's very, this is a very logical wild card situation, right? For example, Sterling, now that, for example, there's a bit more depth in the team, I mean, it may also depend on the Mudryk injury, because if Mudryk is out, Sterling can stay, and maybe you've got Pickford for Bournemouth. But I can understand Pickford is irresistibly annoying, and I'm pretty glad to be rid of Pickford myself. And I wasn't planning to wildcard as well, Jerome, and I share your thoughts on Sterling. But the reason why, as I said, I plan to wildcard is I've given, I think, United more than enough of a chance from an attacking point of view, but I just no longer can sustain owning these. Excuse me, sorry, I'm just trying to fix my lighting as well. I've given them enough of a chance where I think I can't justify with the sort of position that I'm in with for example, like Sterling rotation threat. Holding a lot of money into assets that I probably won't play over the next 2 weeks in terms of Saliba and Estupiñán. And then also, for example, I think a chance to move away from Mbumo, very, very enticing. And yeah, ultimately, I just sort of thought about, let's say, Fernandes and Rashford, wanting to move them on for Son and Maddison is pretty much what's in my mind. And then obviously Saka for Salah is conceptually what this team is sort of looking like. And so, yeah, let's make a Holland-less squad. But in terms of responding to questions as well, Meerkat says, if I'm not captaining Haaland, I mean, I think if you're not captaining Haaland, the question is, do you think that for all the players that you're creating without Haaland, will they outscore Haaland? Because I still try to think about maximizing points, if that makes sense. So if I think, for example, I can take Haaland out of my team and I think the aggregate of players outside of Haaland will do better, then obviously I'll go Holland-less. But for now, I think Haaland actually has enough quality where even if I don't captain him every week, that he's still a good pick. And I definitely think there are 2 Haaland captaincies that I'm certain I will do. One, which is obviously going to be the Bournemouth at home game, and then 2, which is going to be the Brighton at home game. So that's sort of my immediate thoughts on that. Now, obviously, you can just captain Salah versus Everton, but I'm actually probably a little bit more tempted to go Haaland versus Brighton. So those are the 2 fixtures where I think I'll go Haaland captaincy. And ultimately, as I said, the only squad that I've thought about, and we'll do it in a moment, is something that incorporates some of the more premium defenders. Now, I already have Trippier in this team, but I don't think he'll actually stay on this draft. Francis says, hi, Fran, is Solanke a viable option, and would you go Eze or Neto? So I actually like Eze much more than Neto, just because he's a penalty taker. Now, obviously, Eze has completely flattered to deceive for a lot of owners from even Game Week 1. But I truly think that actually, when you look at, let's say, Game Weeks 9 and 10, they're bad games, but you probably actually want to create a little bit of a stronger depth. So for example, on Game Week 9, I'm actually planning to bench Eze for a Newcastle defender, which would mean Burn. Oh, thank you so much as well, Gothic Van Life. I really appreciate the donation. And thank you so much for being around. as well. It's really nice to have you on live streams and supporting the channel as well. So thank you for that. But going back to that, sorry, so I'd probably be happy to bench Eze, but the thing with Neto as well is I don't think there's anyone that perfectly rotates well with Neto, and I don't think he has enough value himself, as I said, because he's a little bit more of a creative player than, let's say, a goal scorer to compare to Eze, where I think Eze has been extremely unfortunate. So when we look at, let's say, his expected goal involvement, it's been very, very consistent match to match. And so the fact that he's only really come away with all of these games with effectively 1 goal, 1 assist is a little bit shocking because, as you can see, the expected goal involvement so far has literally added up to 4.1. So we're expecting at least 4 returns so far. And some people will ask, okay, why are you insisting on let's say investing into a player who's underperformed? And ultimately what I would say is I don't believe Eze is a career, for example, historical underperformer. So I have no reason to believe that he will continue to underperform. I think if you look at last season, what's a good example of performance and overperformance and underperformance? So Mitoma, when Roberto De Zerbi first came into the team last season, completely overperformed for at least half of the season until around game week 28. And after that, his underlying data per match, expected goal involvement, continued to rise per game, and he failed to deliver pretty much for the end of the entire season, and we all owned him. But that shows you, for example, that you probably still want to invest into all these players who actually get really good expected goal involvement, but you're never going to perfectly capture, unless you're, let's say, a professional gambler and maybe one of the greatest sort of players in the world in terms of assessing form per se. It's very hard to justify that, but I think it's easy to place our confidence in players who actually are posting really good expected goal involvement, because in the future, we'd probably expect them to continue to do well if they continue to post these numbers. And what's a good example of that? Mitoma, basically from game weeks 1 to 7 so far, is a good example of that, right? Where he's gone from overperforming to underperforming and back to overperforming. But also the underlying data that he has is very, very good. Neto, yeah, I agree. So Neto and Eze are in a similar position where they don't have this issue of European football. So they're quite nice from that point of view. I don't think Neto's a bad pick at all, but I would definitely prioritize going Eze myself. But yeah, it's up to you. I think I would probably also avoid Gordon, and I'd prefer Neto as well. And that will be a change reflected in my cheat sheet as well, just because of the suspension too. Tempted for Szoboszlai as he's on corners. I think Szoboszlai is a good pick, but he's a little expensive for me, if I'm honest. Palace defense rotates well in Newcastle defense. I think Palace defense is perfectly fine. But which is why also I'm actually just simply interested in owning Johnston as a goalkeeper if I don't go for Raya. Am I capturing price rises? Absolutely. This is why I'm capturing price rises with my team. How are Palace's fixtures? So they're very good basically after game week 9, right? So, sorry, well, I mean, even 10 you can argue is a decent fixture because I don't think Spurs are a particularly great defensive team. But look at the run. So Spurs, Burnley, Everton, Luton, West Ham, Bournemouth. That is a beautiful run of games where I definitely want to own Eze, and then I can actually move away from Eze around this sort of window here. At the same time, you might be interested in going for someone like Bowen in game week 10 too, or Ward-Prowse. What on earth is going on with Brentford? I mean, look, Brentford have posted probably 2 of the worst games that they have in the last 2 fixtures, but fortunately, I think Mbeumo has looked relatively good in those games, even though he's basically been hugging the touchline referee and he's been officiating alongside him, looking for offside calls. That's basically the position that Mbeumo is playing right now. But I think there's a good enough reason to keep Mbeumo if, let's say, Diaby is injured. So if Diaby is injured, I think I'm going to keep Mbeumo on my team, try and capture this Burnley home game, and maybe I'll just bin off Mbeumo. The weird thing about Mbeumo is I think he is, as I said, a season keeper, but obviously Brentford do look horrific when you just look at a two game sample size. They do have 2 or 3 significant injuries, and yeah, as I said, I would like to move Mbeumo on to Diaby, and if I, let's say, don't keep Mbeumo on my team, I think I might actually move towards a 3-4-3 structure, right? So for example, if Diaby's not fit and I don't want to keep Mbeumo, I think what I'll actually do is probably go for Watkins, Alvarez, Haaland, and then try and create a structure here where I go Maddison as well, and then maybe go off of Trippier. Go for my man Dalot here, and then probably also think about keeper rotation, but I'd say probably this is an opportunity to go Porro, maybe go Turner here, and then actually replace Lamptey with Taylor, because this would give me really strong depth in this structure here. And yeah, I mean, the one thing, of course, is that I would be relying on, let's say, one of the worst benches in the world, the bench being Turner, the bench being Taylor, and the bench being Nakamba, and then obviously that fourth defender who's going to be constantly rotating. So that is one of the questions I have. If I go 3-4-3, do I like the structure at all? Maybe I do, maybe I don't. I'm not super sold on it. So I do sort of prefer a 3-5-2 structure. But if we, let's say, talk Holland-less for a moment, let's go Holland-less, right? So I think honestly, I'm not going to pay Darwin any consideration until I know that Darwin is Gakpo is out for, let's say, 2 to 3 months. I'm not going to touch Darwin because yes, the fixtures are good, but actually, ironically, he's probably going to play this full Brighton game for like 85 minutes, and then Everton, he's actually probably going to come, off the bench because he's traveling, right? So there's a high chance, once again, he's one of those sort of traveling players that will only play for 30 minutes in that fixture here, which is a problem for this Everton at home game. And then obviously Nottingham Forest and Luton, you probably definitely want to own a starting Darwin, but can you confirm that unless Gakpo is injured? So it would definitely depend on Gakpo. So for now, I'm going to go Watkins and Alvarez. And as far as, let's say, upgrading Nakamba, I think this is a good opportunity to actually own Fernandes just to see him as a placeholder for Saka, because look, Saka has a really bad game. If you see the Spurs players as a season keeper, then maybe just persist with Fernandes as well. I think is an okay option. Hope that he gets a penalty or maybe, let's say, something from the Sheffield United game at the bare minimum, and then actually maybe go with the structure where you have him. I'd probably downgrade Udogie. I'd probably upgrade. I mean, I'd probably actually still go Dalot. And I'd probably replace my keeper as well. Use it as a chance to upgrade my keeper. I'm trying to think, actually, one thing I want to do. Like, who goes for Trent? I'm not sure if you need 5 defenders if you're going to go for Trent. Because when you look at Trent's fixtures, you're definitely going to play him Everton, Nottingham Forest, Luton, Brentford. Basically, those 4 fixtures in a row are covered. So you don't really need 5 defenders in a rotation. You probably could save some money. I think I would take the opportunity, honestly, to go for Raya here because I'm struggling for an Arsenal defender. And I might actually also take the opportunity to get an upgrade over Udogie, which is going to be Porro, and then have maybe something like this as a structure. Because if you think about it, Dalot covers game weeks 8 and 9 quite well. And actually, you can bench Trent for the Brighton fixture, which I think is a really bad game for Trent, right? I would actually bench Trent here. I'd play Dalot, Pedro Porro, and Cash in this fixture. And then on game week 9, what you would do as well is probably actually... you're going to play a 4-4-2 here because you'll bench Eze against Newcastle. Maybe you play Burn, maybe you don't, but I would definitely go with Dalot once again because he's versus Sheffield United. Pedro Porro, I would definitely play. Trent, I would definitely play. Cash, I would definitely... It's Cash or Burn, I think. It depends on how you rate this West Ham at home fixture. I'd probably go with Cash just because of attacking upside and then go like that. But that also sort of screams to me that maybe we don't have any value in terms of Burn. So he can be potentially sort of just a rotation defender. And then we can actually upgrade Eze as well. So maybe if we upgrade Eze, who can we actually go for? I'm not super sold on Bowen, but we can actually think about, let's say, upgrading from him as well. So we have a chance to go Trent. Am I missing out anyone? Because I think you just want to save enough money so that you can actually go from, let's say, Fernandes to Saka or Odegaard in the future. Maybe you actually keep Maddison in this run of games. How do you get Saka in? I think Saka is always going to be a transfer from someone like Fernandes, which means that you need to save a little bit of money in the bank if you go Holland-less. Maybe actually I think what we need to do is go Trippier, right? I think we might have to go Trippier here. So I think Eze is not a bad pick, particularly since he can be rotatable. I can't really afford Trippier from these picks here. I don't really want to bin Dalot, but... Because the thing is, look at these fixtures. Like Fulham honestly struggled to score so much. Luton should be a good game. Sheffield United, Brentford, like these are all such good games for Mr. Diogo here. Kind of finding it hard. Maybe we actually save money again from Raya. Maybe we go Johnston as well. And then maybe we go for an Arsenal defender. You could maybe just go Trippier if you don't like Trent. And then go for an Arsenal defender here. Someone like Zinchenko is not bad. And then maybe upgrade Eze to... Got so much money now. It's so enticing, but then let me think about captaincy. So Son on 8, Salah on 9, Salah on 10, Salah, no one on 11. Maybe Julian Alvarez on 11. On On 12, you go probably Salah again. It's kind of tough here. I'm trying to think. You want to go Bowen? Time to move on Rashi. I think it's a good time to move on Rashford. But I'd still probably consider also selling Saka just because he's versatile and he might be a doubt. But I'm not 100% certain on that. Maybe Zinchenko's a little pricey here. This goes to 8.6. I mean, I don't see the value in, let's say, my team value is very high. What do you mean? How can I get Madison in? I've already got. I can just go Madison as soon as I take Watkins out. I mean, maybe we can punt on Darwin here, in theory. It's a tough one because I'd probably actually think about. I do think a Liverpool defender is nice. I think I would go actually. I probably wouldn't go Burn. I'd probably go for this. Yeah, this is probably what I'd go for. Something like that. But I don't know about punting on Darwin as well. And I'm not 100% sold on Trent, if I'm honest, because I do think Szoboszlai and Trent sort of take away from each other as fantasy picks. So that's sort of a consideration that I have in my mind. What do you guys think about going double Spurs defense and maybe not going Madison? I mean, it's tough though. I can't justify it unless I just go. I guess you can always go Diaby here. It's quite tight, but this is quite nice. I'm not going Holland-less. I'm just trying to show what people can do if they go Holland-less themselves. I don't think I'm going Holland-less, which is why I'm not encouraging anyone to go Holland-less. I think yeah. You can obviously, like, for example, if you don't have the same team value as me, I think you can obviously downgrade keeper. You can downgrade Pedro Porro. You can probably go for, Taylor as a 3.9 defender. I mean, if you really want to, you can as well go Mubama. To be honest, I love Julian Alvarez so much. Like, I think if I save a little bit of money in the bank, have this team, and then switch from Fernandes to Saka, then I think I'm chilling, right? What do you guys think? I'm not saying Holland-less is bad. I think some people actually with really bad team value should consider going Holland-less. Solanke is actually really good as well, to be honest. Solanke is very good for the next 3 fixtures. Nice to see you guys in chat, though, just in general. I like the conversation that's going on today. Conference League fixtures depends on Diaby. Would you go Holland-less over Salah-less? I would actually prefer Holland-less over this run than Salah-less, if I'm honest. But I think I kind of, as you can see, I can clearly afford a Holland Salah draft. I mean, I can even afford this crazy structure here, which is basically, a 3-4-3, right? Where I'm actually going for players like Trippier as well. But whether I go Trippier is another question. I am not so fond of Trippier. I've owned Trippier for his 18 points, his 12 points. I don't think he's going to repeat the performance nonstop, but he is an amazing pick, so I'm not going to sort of tear him down. How I go Madison from here is I actually probably go off of Watkins, and I know this is controversial, but I probably wouldn't go Watkins because I would rather keep Julian Alvarez for now, and then I would probably upgrade as well another defender in this situation. As well as my keeper. So I would probably consider Johnson again. And then defender-wise here, I've got a chance to basically just... I mean, I could go Pau. I could also just go Taylor here as well. And then think about what kind of money that gives me. So this gives me money to upgrade Diaby. Now, I also kind of want to leave enough money in the bank so that I can go from Madison to Saka in one move, which is something that I've been thinking about in my mind for quite a while. I also like the idea of actually just spending a little bit more money again, going for Raya, because yes, of course, the fixtures aren't very good 8 to 9, but the idea with going Raya is this wildcard is going to survive until game week 20, right? So in general, I think backing Arsenal defense at such a cheap price sounds really fun. which is something I want to do. But let's actually look at chat for a second. So some people have actually said, good to actually see this interaction between people in the chat who haven't talked with each other in a while. It's nice to see. Is cash to Botman for a -4 worth it? I don't think it's worth it, to be honest, because this isn't an amazing fixture from Aston Villa. It's still Wolves away from home, right? So I don't think it's horrific. Is Trippier essential? I don't think so. What do you think is like the wild card? I think he's a good pick. Anka says, which combination of two would you sell from these? Mbuma, Ward-Prowse, Alvarez, Ruben Diaz, or Salah? Sorry, which combination of two? Are you saying it's Mbuma, Ward-Prowse, or Alvarez, Ruben Diaz, or am I misunderstanding the question? We can do better than 30 likes. Appreciate that, Ahmed. Matty Cash is very in form, and Botman. I mean, Botman's not going to play in Game Week 8, but the thing is, it's Matty Cash versus Aston Villa, right? I mean, like Matty Cash has been fantastic, but it's not like it's not like Matty Cash is hauling every single game, right? I mean, he's had, like, in the tough fixtures, you can see, especially away from home, they've been tough. And even the Chelsea game, this was 10 versus 11, so quite a unique circumstance. Mbumo Diaz. I do think Diaz is a sell for sure, but I'm not sure if Alvarez. I don't think Alvarez is a sell. I'd probably, yeah. I mean, Mbumo Diaz are nice sells for sure. Nahal says, rate your wildcard draft. Areola, Turner, Udogi. I don't like Dean. I would really go cash if I could. Sufal, he's okay. Burn, Taylor, Son, Salah, Diaby, Saka, Matters, Holland, Alvarez. I think that's a strong draft. Personally, I think that's a strong draft. I guess maybe you're a little bit more cash strapped than myself. So maybe that's a different situation, circumstance. Richarlison, I think, is too much of a punt. I think there are so many guarantees from Son, so many guarantees from Maddison. Even, for example, going double Spurs defense, I would prefer over Richarlison. I just can't guarantee Richarlison's minutes. I'm going to avoid Saka, but only for 2 weeks, guys. I'm gonna bring back Saka 100% on Game Week 10, so it's not even a question for me. The whole point is, let's say if I create a very, very strong team with really, really good depth, right? It's very easy for me to actually save transfers to get towards Saka, in theory. Finished 78 points and still have Kabori. Went for no City and Watkins wildcard. That is insane. So congratulations on that. Yeah. What do you think about old school double Liverpool fullbacks? I don't like it just because I think it's a little bit too expensive still. I think they really did overprice Trent this season. I think I'd be probably a little bit more tempted towards Robertson. I'll tell you why. Just because I feel like if you go to Robertson, it feels like moving towards Trippier is nicer without sort of creating a hole in terms of your budget. So let's say you want to move off of Trent suddenly. You're going to get, let's say, a surplus of value in your team, but then actually you kind of have to spend that value back in 2 free transfers is the way I think. So I'd probably prefer, let's say, Robertson if you kind of want to move around between Robertson and Trippier. Because probably the next time I actually go for Trippier is probably going to be around Game Week 14, around that sort of time. Because Game Week 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, like these are super good fixtures for Newcastle. And I'd probably actually think about finding a way to own them through 2021-22, just so that I kind of capture once again 23, 24, 25. Now, it obviously depends on wildcards and things like that. But keep in mind, of course, City will have a blank game week, etc., etc. You have no interest in having Holland. I mean, that's fair enough then. I think if you don't go for Holland, then you kind of have to, you actually kind of have to invest into players like Fernandes or Trent. Is cash to Botman for -4 worth it? As I said, I don't think so. Just not for this fixture. I'd probably think about just going cash the week after that. Will Morris bang tomorrow? I mean, you've already banged already, Brandon, haven't you? So, will he bang tomorrow? I don't know, but I'd probably expect Burnley to get a result if I'm honest. Robert Sanchez sleeper pick? Yeah, I mean he's been a good pick so far, but he's not going to be a sleeper pick anymore just because the Chelsea fixtures after this are very, very bad. What Liverpool attacker would you choose, not including Salah? I mean, probably I would probably consider Darwin, but I really, really need a Gakpo diagnosis in terms of his injury. Other than that, obviously you can consider Luis Diaz as well, but I'm a bit concerned about him. Your thoughts on Turner, Areola, Cash, Burn, Udogi, Zinchenko, 4 million defender? Okay, Son, Salah, Maddison, Diaby. Yeah, it's a good mid-structure. Holland, Alvarez, Darwin. That's a pretty good forward line. To be honest, I would, if I could, stretch Darwin to Watkins. Like, I'm not fond of, let's say, punting on Darwin, but it's up to you as well. Favorite defender by this week? I think it's such a bad. I think it's Pedro Porro. Pedro Porro is the buy. Um, Brighton are pretty fixture proof. Do we actually believe that though? So where has he gotten his big points? In all the easy games, I would say. Aston Villa, tough game, blank. Man United, tough game, blank. Newcastle, pretty much a blank. West Ham, that's a blank. I mean, he's pretty much smashed it in what you would consider easier games. So I don't think Brighton are fixture proof. They obviously can score versus some of the top teams in the world, but I probably wouldn't back Brighton until game week 10 is sort of the way I'm seeing it. I think that bringing Saka in for Son this week is very logical. 100% Mr. Feather. I was actually before I pressed the button on the wild card, I actually did Saka to Son myself just so I could capture the price rise. But then I also saw that Rashford was close to a fall. So I mean, I might even end up, for example, if you find me in a state of delusion, that I might actually go, towards some other picks later. But I think for now I'm on one United, but I might even end up with Fernandes at the end of my draft. It really depends on Diaby, for example, as well, and whether he's injured or not. Sell Trippier for Raya, Madison, and Pedro Porro. Not see. I'm okay. I mean, who else are you selling as well in this sort of combination here? Burn Trippier, yeah. I mean, I've got Burn and Trippier for now. So when I reset, you'll see that I've got Burn and Trippier, who'll probably, hopefully, rise. My wildcard is active. That is correct, Mr. Feather. You can see on the screen here where it says active chip wildcard. So I have already wildcarded. Trent will probably price drop at least once this week, as far as I can see. Thoughts on Solanke, differential third? I think he's a good differential third forward, but he's so close to Alvarez in terms of price for me. There's no way I'm going Solanke. Outside of Spurs, favorite defender buys. Probably still Cash, if I'm honest. It's not a perfect fixture, but it's still a good run. Still a good run in general. Mbumo to or you can just go for a new. For example, you can also just go for a Crystal Palace defender like Guehi as well. Is Watkins essential in wildcard 8? I don't think so, because I'm probably going to go off of Watkins. If we look at fixtures, I think Watkins actually has his run really starts game week. Like, it starts now on paper, but I think jumping on to Watkins on game week 10 is also not a bad idea. So you can think about that as well. Who else should I sell? Anderson in for Trippier. I think Palace defense. You're blocked on Spurs and Palace and already have cash. I mean, if you have all these sorts of players, I reckon you've got a good defense for this week now. I mean, you could look at a Fulham defender just because they're playing Sheffield United, but it's very short-termist. Anderson in for Trippier. You think Palace defense rotates well? I mean, you could do that. I mean, you could also just go Guehi and save yourself a bit of money. I mean, I don't think Anderson's gonna for example, score 2 goals at a 7-game pace. So you can definitely just maybe save a bit of money and just go Guehi as well. Leo says, looking to bring in Turner for Ederson to increase budget. Would you do that for transfer tonight to avoid Turner price rise? I don't think Turner will actually rise in price. And also, I mean, I don't think he's going to rise in price twice. So I wouldn't be too concerned about Turner in general. I think Turner will probably end up actually being another keeper for me. Do you think you're just coping when I think that I don't think Alvarez can cover Holland, but I don't think there's anything wrong really with going Holland-less. I'm just not going to go for it because I think I have enough money in the bank to create a good team with Holland and Salah. But I've seen, for example, people with less transfer value, and it doesn't actually seem like a Salah Holland draft makes too much sense for them because they're sacrificing too much. For example, they're suddenly going for a lot of budget picks, zero depth, which is always an issue. For example, just look at the season, the amount of injuries we've had so far. Depth has been useful. I mean, obviously, depth has been bad this week if you went for Estupiñán on the bench, but you understand my point. And Mbumo to Darwin for -4 this week. I probably wouldn't do that. Unless, for example, you're super confident about Darwin's minutes, and let's say Gakpo is confirmed to be out for, let's say, a month. Is Son's price going up tonight? I don't think so. He already went up 2 days ago. Keith has Areola, Cash, Burn, Botman, Trippier, Bruno, Madison, Bowen, Foden, Son, Holland, Watkins. 79 points. That's insane. That is pretty insane. What are you going to do with Foden and players like that going forwards? I mean, Watkins is absolutely mental. Well done for going for Watkins. Free hit this game week. What's your squad? I mean, if I was free hit this game week, do you still do streams where you review teams? I don't have. I mean, just because chat is kind of flowing a lot, I guess I don't look at teams too much. But you can feel free to always DM me about your team, and I'll probably respond. Foden to Azir Diaby this week. I'd probably go Foden to. I'd probably wait for I would wait for a confirmation on whether Diaby's fit because we don't actually know whether he's fit or not. Transfer Mbumo for a -4 for a player in the same price range. I don't think you need to overreact on Mbumo. It really depends though, Arvid. Like, are you so panicked about Mbumo that you don't want to give him the Burnley game, sorry? Because for example, I think Burnley is a really nice fixture. I'd probably sell Mbumo on Game Week 10 if anything. I think Game Week 10 is a nice place to sell Mbumo. Is cash to Botman for a -4 worth it? I mean, I've already answered the question. I don't think it's worth it, but you can still do it if you want. Mbumo's playing United. It's a good fixture. Could be. Start Saliba or Bayer, Game Week 8. Definitely going to be Bayer. I mean, like, you're picking between... I mean, I'd probably go Bayer, but like, there's really nothing between them. Honestly, there's nothing between them. Darwin captain option this week? I think he has to start 100%. I agree, but is he a captaincy option? I don't think so. Not versus Brighton away. MXC says, thoughts on your drafts? Raya, Arella, Cash, Gray Anderson, Colwell, Saliba, Pedro Porro, Salah, Son. I mean, how many weeks are you actually going to play Colwell is the only question I'd ask. I think the rest of the team actually is really nice. So, yeah, it's a good team. As far as Jangster, Botman isn't available. Exactly, yeah, Botman's not available until Game Week 9, it seems like, because obviously the international break. I really would not go for Dean because I think sooner than later he's going to be competing for minutes with Moreno, and that's going to be a huge problem for Dean. I mean, at that rate, I'd probably go for Pau, Pau Torres. Son's price is not going up tonight, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. The Sander, nice to see you around. Bruno and Rashi still holding. I think if you can afford luxury transfer Rashford to Son, I would do it because Son is actually a very good captaincy option. Are they worth holding? I would actually say so, particularly if you're planning to Game Week 10 wildcard. Wildcard is active. That's correct. It is. It is active indeed. All right, let's actually go back to the draft that I'm most fond of right now, just so I can actually show it to you guys, and then I can probably log off for today. So remember, Mbumo is a placeholder for Diaby. Okay, let's just put Diaby in the team for now, if he's fit. Yeah, if he's fit. Poro. I am captaining Son this week, yeah. I won't say 100%, but if let's say Son has the all clear from Angie, I will probably captain Son this week, yeah. This is probably a draft that I might be interested in. But as I said, also, I kind of like the option of maybe having enough money in the bank to go from Madison to, Saka, like one transfer. Now, Saka needs to fall to at least 8.6, so I can actually do that because if I go Taylor, it's kind of tight, isn't it? I mean, I can still do it. I can go, for example, for this sort of draft here, and then in 2 weeks' time, Madison can be Saka. Really need Son to start playing exactly 17 minutes. I mean, I wouldn't be too concerned about a Luton low block. Solanke. So Solanke's a good pick, but I'm definitely going to prefer Alvarez because I don't see... Did Liverpool... I mean, look, let's be honest, though. If Liverpool employ a low block, I'd have a lot more confidence in Liverpool's low block than, let's say, I don't know, Luton or Sheffield's low block. Now, obviously, Son was pretty poor versus Sheffield, but I don't think it just means that he can't do well versus a low block ever again. And also, I mean, 10 versus 11, so it's a little unfair with Liverpool. But yeah, not worried about Spurs and effectiveness against low block teams. Not really, no, to be honest. You prefer Awani over Solanke? Yeah, I think that's totally fair, totally justified as well. Manager thinking of selling Holland. I mean, the upside or the downside is like you probably actually have to go for a United player in the midfield. Just go for another super stacked midfield setup. Go for Watkins. Thank you so much, Anka. Really, really appreciate the donation. Um, no, I really appreciate that, and obviously you've been supporting me for a long time, so it is much appreciated. And I hope your season's going well as well. I hope you've had a couple more green arrows than I have so far. Obviously, I've been very, very lucky as well and fortunate to be in the position that I am. But obviously, I'd like to do better. But hope you're doing well. And yeah, thank you so much for the donation once again. You think Salah is a better captaincy bet this week than Son? I mean, I think Salah and Son are actually both better captaincies than Holland. Do I watch Big Six? No. What is Big Six? Oh, it's a debate show. No, I actually don't watch it, but I'll check it out if you think it's worth watching. When to sell Colwell? I'd probably sell Colwell the next week, right? So I'd keep him for the Burnley game for sure, and then maybe you can actually the Big Six show. I'll have a look at it. Have not heard of it. Sorry. But yeah, I'd sell Colwell after the Burnley game and actually think about that. Who's a shaky defense? Sorry. I think, sorry, going back to the question in terms of taking a little bit more of a detailed answer for your question, Jangsta. I think Holland, like a Holland-less draft to me is probably a little bit better if you're really struggling with team value, because I have okay team value versus most managers, I would say. Whereas a lot of managers probably have a little bit less, and I can understand why they need to go for Salah. As far as Ben, your question, and also, it really just depends on, let's say, if you go for Watkins, Fernandez, Trent, all these sorts of players, like, do you think the balance of that is going to outweigh Haaland? Because, yes, I do think the reality is I'm probably only going to captain Haaland on game weeks 9 and game week 11 as well. So when you think about it, 8, 10, 12, and even arguably 13, but actually there's not really any good captaincy choice on 13. Like, all those weeks could be non-Haaland captaincy weeks. Triple captain Holland versus United. I'm not going to do it versus United away. I'm pretty sure he blanked versus United away last season. It was at United at home where he got that hat trick. Or sorry, it was when he was playing at home that he got a hat trick. As far as Ben's question, Burn, Trippier, and Bono going up tonight. Son, Madison, Areola, Neto, Turner will rise before next deadline. Yeah, I mean, the thing obviously is we need to capture 2 price rises, right? Unless we're trying to keep the player in our team. So I don't see Bowen, for example, getting another price rise. Therefore, I'm probably not going to go for Bowen. Because, for example, if I reset my team, I don't want to lose team value on Holland. I don't want to lose transfer value on Alvarez. Not on Watkins either. Not on Salah because he's risen. Not on Son because he's risen. Not on Trippier, just in case, for example, for whatever reason, I still want to go for a Trippier draft. So I can't capture, in a sense, the Bowen price rise right now, unless... No, I really can't, because I need to capture the Burn price rise too. Yeah, I just can't, basically. So would you do Botman to Burn considering injury? No, I don't think Botman to Burn makes any sense because it's West Ham away, so it's a very bad fixture. For example, if I was, let's say, to Wildcard, right, to the draft that I really like. Okay, I'm gonna just keep it on the draft that I really like and stop changing it around. Maybe we just go Johnston as well. Think about Taylor. I go Taylor for now. This guy is Dallo. This guy is Madison. This could be Archer or this could be Mubama. Now, okay, some sort of draft structure like this is something that I generally quite like. As I said, I might want to keep Son going forwards, but obviously Son versus Crystal Palace, Chelsea. I mean, it really just depends. I'd probably only be keeping one player. I'd probably actually go for, let's say, Saka instead. I might not want to go both Saka and Odegaard, but ultimately there's also going to be a time where, miraculously, United will have 3 good fixtures here as well, and it might be the time for me to actually go for, let's say, Fernandes from game week 11, so something like that. I'm not staying faithful to Mbumo. He's probably going to beat Diaby, but I really need Diaby to be confirmed to be playing. So 50k here with Bell and Morris to go. That's massive, Arvid. Well done. Game Session says, feels like I want to drop a defender to 4.5 in order to upgrade Alvarez to Watkins. You could do that. Are you saying in terms of my team here? I mean, obviously, I can still go for Watkins. But I also own Alvarez at 6.8, which I think is quite different. A lot of people own Alvarez at a little bit more of an expensive price. So it's quite different. This season has made me value early moves I mean, the thing is, in a way, I've not played in a way at all to sort of capture price rises, right? I just got lucky where, for example, I got price rises in certain positions. Why Johnson? Just because fixtures actually look pretty good, you know, overall. For example, fixtures from Gameweek like 8 to 20 are just in general not bad. Crystal Palace. Wait, what is going on here? This is Turner. What am I doing? My bad. Yeah, so for example, over these fixtures here, and I can actually just rotate 16, 17, 18 with Areola, which are the tough games. And generally decent fixtures. Crystal Palace, top half, top 5 usually defense for the last 2 seasons. So I quite like that. And then, as I said, Areola, I can play him 16, 17, maybe even 18 as well, which are the sort of bad Johnson fixtures. Content creators were all telling us not to worry about price movements. All of a sudden, we've not. I mean, the thing is, as I said, I've not done anything this season where I would say I was chasing any price rises, other than, for example, this wild card on this week, and I've been fully sort of open, and I think I've disclosed, for example, every move I've made. So, for example, on the night that I wild carded, I already made a tweet about it. So I don't think I don't think you. I mean, at least I think I'm not guilty of that. For example, as I said, the price rises I've gotten so far. I mean, Alvarez, I just transferred him in. So if we look at my team in terms of price rises this season, so obviously I start with a couple players that got price rises. So for example, Chilwell, Estupiñán, Saliba, I was just lucky to have them, and Bumo as well. So I already owned all these players and got their price rises. And then I moved. Okay, I rolled this week, and then obviously I went Sterling and Gusto and managed to get price rises there. Now I didn't actually keep the Sterling price rise, but he still rose. So I got Gusto price rise just from a natural transfer, playing him versus Luton. And then I actually transferred in Alvarez on game week 4. So this was way before everyone was going Alvarez. Everyone went for Alvarez in this fixture here in game week 6 in Nottingham Forest. And then I actually managed to get Alvarez price rises like that. No, I get what you mean, that it's not aimed at me. I'm just saying that I think sometimes, like, I always play in a way to maximize points, and I've been fortunate in a sense to get players that have also done well and then actually got on subsequent price rises. But I've also, for example, if I was so concerned about price rises, I would also not have owned or not have kept, for example, Rashford and Bruno and players like that, and probably have just moved into Son and even Madison, who both have gotten a lot of price rises. So I think it's a bit unfortunate in the sense that a lot of the picks that content creators have suggested, even myself, have unfortunately not done so well. For example, some of the United picks, and even, for example, the Chelsea picks after game week 3. However, obviously Chelsea picks have done really well. They just haven't played football like Chilwell or like Gusto, because the defense from Chelsea has actually been quite good. Starting Neto and Cash doesn't feel right. Should I start Mbumo? Oh, that's quite tough. I'd probably actually start. I mean, I guess I'd probably go Mbumo Neto in that situation, but I mean, I'd probably be quite tempted to play Cash as well. So it's an odd situation there. What's my team value right now? It's obviously changed because it's dropped because I actually captured some price rises. So because I sold some players that already had some rises on, it's dropped a little bit. So my team value is technically 101.6, but you also need to check what selling value is. So for example, if I go to this website, FPL Gameweek, and then I look at my own rank here, I think this is the Content Creators League, right? Is this correct? Yeah, so on the Content Creators League, you can actually see your rank. So for example, this is my sort of profile here on the right-hand side, or you can even see on the left-hand side too. So as you can see, hopefully you guys can see, I'm actually not sure if the stream is showing well, but you can see that I've got team value 101.8, but then actually I've got something called selling value as well. Why is it not showing the selling value? It usually does. Am I crazy? Or does it not show selling value? Maybe I'm just stupid. I thought this website used to show selling value. But yeah, I mean, selling value is something different as well, because it kind of takes into account the concept of, let's say I own Mbouma at 6.6, but he's not a 6.6 player. So like selling value is a different thing too. I can only sell Mbouma at 6.6. So even though my team value is higher, my selling value is different. What's the easiest? Oh, I can transfer everyone out. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Sorry. Just totally failed an IQ test here, didn't I? Appreciate you for disclosing that, actually. Okay, my selling value is 100.5. But as I've said, I've also sold some players that I had previous sell value on. Can you explain best way to catch price rises on a wild card? I mean, there's no best way. I think the best way is you activate the wild card, you keep all the players you want to keep. You look at this website, FPL statistics. You go to the last page to check who's actually close to falling. So on the last page here, the people at the bottom of this list are close to falling, so therefore you don't want to own these sorts of players. I've already moved out of Chilwell, I've moved out of Stupinian, and I've moved out of Saliba as well. These were all players that were, I mean, Saliba's not close to falling actually, excuse me, but Saliba was someone that I have no interest in keeping on my wildcard draft, so I've already sold him, right? So because Stupinian is close to a price fall, he's probably a good sell, but actually if you bought him at 5.0, there would be no impacts on that. However, this is the time, for example, if you want to own Burn in your draft and you actually, fancy keeping Burn in your team, then this is the time to move Burn into your team, and hopefully by tonight he'll get a price rise, and then Burn will actually be in your team tomorrow at 4.6, and therefore you would have captured a price rise. But keep in mind that you will only benefit to get, I mean, first of all, if you plan on keeping the player, it's very good to capture even one price rise, but you will only benefit truly from a sort of financial point of view if you get two price rises, right? So for example, what's a good example of that? So I bought Mbuma at 6.5. He's at 6.8. But even if he drops to 6.7, my selling value for Mbuma will always be 6.6. So because he's actually gotten 3 price rises. So every 2 price rises, you get 0.1 back in terms of selling value. So you need to kind of capture 2 price rises if you want to sell the player once again, and therefore get additional value out of that. So to get an additional 0.1 of selling value within your team. So for example, let's say Burn gets 2 price rises, but I don't plan on keeping him in my draft. He would probably go from 4.5 to 4.7. I would capture those 2 price rises. And by the time he's at 4.7, I can sell him at 4.6. And then actually I would have pocketed 0.1 for change. But that's usually something that doesn't happen as well. Click list in the transfer tab. Why am I such a rookie? Am I not seeing something? List. Okay, yeah, that's a good point as well. So yeah, you can actually see your selling price, your current price, purchase price. See, I don't know this stuff, but I just remember like mathematically what price I own these players on. Imdad says you're doing a great job. Thank you so much as well. I will keep the content coming. Really appreciate that. Awani sounds nice, but at least I have. Yeah, I do. I don't think going from Alvarez to Awani makes any sense if I'm being honest. I would probably keep Alvarez. Yeah, catching one can also help your winning list to hold a player through a price decrease and hold decision to the deadline. No, I agree with that too as well. So there's a lot of things that, for example, let's say think about this. Like, for example, I sold Rashford before he dropped in price. I could actually go and buy back Rashford if I think Rashford will magically do well. Have you ever played the PL Fantasy on Fan Team? I'm playing Fan Team this season, yeah. But I'm not, for example, heavily invested in it. Like I know a lot of people have multiple teams because that's probably the best way you can actually guarantee yourself doing well on Fan Team. But I have not done that. I've only entered like I think one team. Trent not low enough at the FPL statistics website. Yeah, I mean there's other. I mean I'm not a mathematical genius by nature, but I have pretty good memory. Is all. Trent not low enough for the, yeah, I mean, I think so. What are the other websites? Fantasy Football Fix, which I think is an app, and then also Fantasy Football Hub, of course, which I'm sponsored by as well, which you can feel free to take a look at. Yeah. Obviously link in the description if you guys are at all interested. What do we know about the Botman injury? So the Botman injury, I'm pretty sure what Eddie Howe said is that he's not fit for Game Week 8, but there's a good chance that we'll see him after the international break, which is perfect actually, right? Because this is not a good Newcastle fixture. This is West Ham away, and you'll probably see Botman back at home in Game Week 9. You keep all your profit on players and get 0.4 point for every shot. Yeah, no, I see what you mean, Ben. In terms of, oh, okay, you prefer, yeah, I think everyone prefers their rules, right? Because rolling transfers as well beyond 2 transfers is also very fun. Thoughts on triple Spurs midfield? I've got no interest in it. I think there's so much value to Porro and Udogi. I might even, for example, consider, let's say, going double Spurs defense. Bowen versus Neto thoughts. I mean, they're not even close, right? I think I would actually just go Neto just because ultimately you're owning a player who's absolutely nailed on both sides, but I'd rather probably go with someone like Neto who I think actually Bowen's expected goal involvement, I must say, his expected goal per 90 this season is absolutely nuts. But I think I just prefer Neto in terms of how I balance the draft, because I think Bowen is so expensive. Where, for example, if I was trying to fit Bowen into my team where the Mbumo position is or the Diaby position is, I can suddenly no longer afford a lot of the transfers I want to do. So I think Bowen is at a very weird price point as well as that fifth defender. If you, let's say, own a Salah, Son, Holland structure. Now, if you don't actually own Holland, then maybe Bowen is actually one that you want to keep. Do you think 3-4-3 is better if I'm wildcarding? I mean, I've tried to create a 3-4-3 already. Maybe this is actually a good 3-4-3 structure, but suddenly I go Diaby. And probably upgrade a few defenders. Maybe just go Dallo here. Maybe upgrade a keeper. Something like this. And then, I don't know. I mean, this could still be Taylor, I guess. But you actually really do need some depth, I suppose. Because you need to also rotate Eze on one of the fixtures. So maybe... I guess you need a player on Game Week 9 as well. I mean, we still have Burn, we still have Udogi, and we still have Cash. Now, maybe we don't need someone for Game Week 9. But we need 4 players for Game Week 9, so Cash will cover. Yeah, I guess we can still go Taylor here. Something like this is not too bad as the structure. And maybe you've actually got the ability, of course, to upgrade Eze. You could even go Poro as well, which is an upgrade I really like making consistently. Yeah, this is not too bad of a structure. But the weird thing I would say is... Yeah, I don't like it because I think I would like double Spurs. I mean, I might even go double Spurs defense in this situation here. Just because I might not even play Burn. I'd prefer playing Udogi. So I could do that as well. This is not too bad of a structure. This would capture triple Spurs. And then Son would actually just be Saka in the future. It's not too bad. Makati. Yeah, Makati's actually... I mean, so is Nakamba, right? He's also playing... I mean, these are both playing 4.4 mids. You like FPL Mate's tier ranking video for transfers in? I mean, I kind of do a cheat sheet series, right? Which I think is sort of my consideration of transfers in, transfers out. Like, what are the best picks for the next few fixtures? That sort of thing. I don't know what you think about that game sessions. You like Poro? I love Poro as well. Is not owning Holland even viable? I think it is viable, but obviously, I'm serious right now when I say this. Like, you need to ask yourself, if you are mentally prepared to go against Holland for like 5 weeks, and particularly not even Holland, but 200% of Holland, and sort of ask yourself that question. Now, I think it's not only just how many times you'd captain Holland. It's also, do you think if you, let's say, drop Holland from your team, do you think the people who aren't Holland are going to cover Holland in terms of points, right? So, for example, if I go Holland-less here, maybe I go Darwin, which... Already, I think this draft is like way too spicy for my liking, just because I can't guarantee Darwin's minutes, and I think he might not even play a lot of minutes in Game Week 9 versus Everton, which is like the prime fixture. And then maybe I go Trent here. Maybe I don't even go 3-4-3. I mean, obviously now this can be like Fernandes even. This guy can be Madison. Maybe I save a little bit of money on one defender. Maybe I drop Udogi, or maybe I drop Raya, keep Udogi. Let's just go Turner for a bit of fun. Like, maybe you go for a structure like this, and therefore it's like really easy to move into Saka Odegaard as well. Like, this could be quite a spicy draft. Trent 7.9 million is just too high. I mean, we can go Robertson, and maybe we can actually get Trippier as well. In theory. Like, this can be a draft structure as well, but I mean, this is so stacked. Maybe we don't need... I mean, let's say if I play Robertson, if I play Trippier and I play Udogi, I guess I don't... Who plays on Game Week 12 that's good? Trippier, I think, he's got a good fixture there too. Good fixture. Good fixture. Maybe we drop Dallo here. Go Taylor. Maybe we can upgrade keeper. Go Raya. This is a nice draft structure as well. You would put decent money on one Holland hat trick in the next 10 for Holland. I honestly, there's a good chance of that. There's a good chance of that. I mean, this is a pretty monstrous team for 3-4-3. I would say. FPL tools extension. Yeah, I mean, okay. Once again, not to be sort of a prat, but yeah, I do sort of remember the fixtures in my head. But I just like showing people the fixtures if they want to be reminded of them. Because obviously I think FPL it only goes for like 4 fixtures, right, or 5. I mean, obviously that covers 12, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, but probably drop Darwin. Yeah, if we drop Darwin, like what happens here? I mean, you could go Solanke as well. Maybe Solanke would actually allow you to maybe create like a little bit more of a rotatable structure. Um, I'm not sure about Neto. Obviously, this is like, wow, this drop is stacked, like absolutely stacked. It's not too bad. It's not too bad. I guess you'd have to play Solanke like all these fixtures, right? Which means that like, oh, I'm never gonna play Neto, which is weird. But then I guess I can play Neto as soon as Solanke's kind of useless again. Game week 11, game week 12, they both kind of have a tough fixture. It's a bit of a weird one. I don't know if I really go Neto. But this is another structure here. Why drop Darwin? I mean, I have no confidence in Darwin's minutes. I mean, Darwin has played 32 minutes per game this season. Could you read my team out loud? Yeah, he's lit. I calculated it, right. So I think because he got benched in the Spurs game and he was also on the bench for it. So he was fit for it. He's played 32 minutes per game this season. And I don't think one injury is going to suddenly make Darwin nailed. So yeah, Darwin is a bit of a kind of, it's like you have to be certain Gakpo's out, and you also have to be certain that also remember that Jurgen Klopp also mentioned that Darwin is dealing with a knee bone injury, right? Which is why I think he's actually played so little minutes this season as well, because he's actually mentioned, and Pep Lenders as well has also mentioned that Darwin's defensive work rate has improved. So the big thing with Darwin actually is that he was benched for the Spurs game because of the sort of knee/bone injury. So that also is going to make Darwin a bit of a doubt naturally, if let's say this injury continues to get worse and worse. And you have an international break where he's probably going to play for Uruguay again, and maybe he could get hurt. He ruled himself out. Exactly, yeah, he ruled himself out, which is obviously why would you have high confidence in his minutes though? I don't understand. So even if you let's say added like 90 minutes for him to play in the game, I don't think you can say he starts every game. I think I mean Jota's already back, after a suspension. So yeah, I've got small confidence in terms of Darwin, because also he could just be benched for the Everton game because he's coming back from an international break, coming back from playing South America. So yeah, it's tough. Now, yeah, I mean, I've got 2 drafts in mind. I think someone did ask for me to say my draft. So, I mean, I am actually on Holland. Let's just do my Watkins draft first. I would go Archer. Let's just see if I can actually afford Archer in the setup. Downgrade a couple players. Why not? Upgrade Neto to Eze. Sorry, I'm just reconfiguring my team so that I don't like defraud you with the team, but do like Dallo. I have to go Udogie here actually, and I can't really go Raya, so this is probably Johnston. And then this is Mr. Burn. So yeah, the number structure, like structure number 1 has 0.1 in the bank, which is not lovely. Obviously, Archer can be Mubama, but Watkins, Holland, obviously front 2, and then a midfield 5 of Madison, Diaby, Eze, Salah, Son, and then a back 5 of Cash, Taylor, Burn, Dallo, Udogie, and then keepers being Johnson, Areola. Now, obviously, positions where you can downgrade, once again, as I said, is Archer, Mubama, and obviously you can go Johnson to Mubama, sorry, not Mubama, you can just go Johnson to a Turner, or you can even go to a 3.9 keeper, because I think there's a good chance that Turner could lose his spot in his team, but maybe I don't want to jump the gun as well. I think one thing that's nice about Flecken is if Flecken, magically starts as a goalkeeper, then you've got a double game week in 20. But honestly, I think Flecken is playing so bad. I generally think Strakosha is going to come back into the team, so I have no interest in him whatsoever. So that's going to be draft number 1. That's a Watkins draft, excuse me, with 0.1 in the bank. And the whole idea here, obviously, is that I go from Son to Madison to Saka to Odegaard in game week 10, and then just enjoy that Sheffield United home game and have a super stacked midfield for that fixture. Obviously, game week 11 is just going to be very bad for me because I'm going to have Salah. Sorry, not game week 11, but game week 11, sorry, from the Arsenal owning point of view is going to be bad because they're going to be playing versus Newcastle away. But still, I'd probably like the fact that I get the Sheffield United fixture. And I would say like 10-11 in aggregate if I combine, let's say, Crystal Palace away and Chelsea at home for this Tottenham team. I think I'd still prefer Odegaard Saka then. So that's something I have in my mind. Now, clearly, obviously, this doesn't have any Arsenal defenders in the draft, but you can maybe also stretch towards going for, let's say, Gabriel as well. I probably won't do it. I mean, maybe if I go Mubama, I can go for Gabriel instead of, let's say, Burn potentially, but Burn plays a really good role. I think the role of Burn is actually to kind of cover Eze's bad fixture, right? Because Eze's worst fixture on paper is Newcastle at Game Week 9. So the whole idea of owning Dan Burn is to cover Game Week 9 and actually hopefully, punt against a clean sheet punt on a clean sheet for this Newcastle team, which is probably going to be one of Newcastle's best fixtures for a long, long time until that Bournemouth game. So for that reason, I'm not super fond of Newcastle and owning Trippier. But anyways, draft number 2 is going to be, I'm going to quickly draft that up again. So draft number 2 is going to feature a lot more rotation, which is something that I personally like, which you guys know already. But, in substance, Julian Alvarez, Holland, Archer can be Mubama, I think, because I have finally a sort of 5 defender rotation that's really strong. And then a midfield 5, which is exactly the same, Madison, Diaby, Eze, Salah, Son. And then a back 5, which is Cash, Gabriel, Burn, Dalot, Pedro, Porro. And for that reason, as I said, I think I'm quite keen on actually going Mubama from Archer because I don't see why I need Archer. And then Johnson and Ariel are once again keepers. You love Sobo. And then actually just going back to chat as well. So I'm just going to leave my team as it is because these are just players who are here to capture price rises and I can't squeeze Bowen in. So reading chat once again. Darwin's minutes aren't great. I agree with that. Gordon, I mean, I've got no interest on Gordon on a wildcard draft this week. I'd probably actually go Neto instead of him. You said Darwin, Gakpo, and Diaz earlier, not counting Salah. Thoughts on Szoboszlai? Szoboszlai, I think both him and Trent sort of make each other worse as picks because there's a mix of set piece duties. On top of that, I think you can see that Sobo also has a pretty good deep lying role. Like his ability to sort of ping that kind of diagonal cross is there. So you can maybe argue that they take away from each other a little bit. Obviously, they sort of strengthen the team because the quality on the right-hand side is now so much better. And he is a huge, gigantic upgrade to Henderson. But are set pieces enough for Szoboszlai to be a good pick? I don't really think so, other than the fact that he can score an occasional banger much better than Henderson can is pretty much my thoughts. Because everyone on this Liverpool team this season, they've improved so much on attack. You can see Luis Diaz's expected goals flying up. Salah expected assists literally tripling, or at least 2.5 times what it was in the previous season. Darwin's expected goal involvement still higher than last season, per 90. Jota as well, I think, has improved. Gakpo too. The only player who hasn't improved, coming back from sort of comparing to his Red Bull Leipzig numbers is actually Szoboszlai. So you can see he's clearly playing a different role, and I don't see the value he has in FPL right now. But maybe I'm wrong, and maybe you can go Szoboszlai and you can enjoy it. But I'd probably actually, if I had to, I'd probably go Luis Diaz. But obviously, him and Darwin, for example, are still so different in terms of expected goal involvement. So that's another thing too. You probably actually need, let's say, Luis Diaz to effectively double Darwin's minutes, which he has actually done so far. So it's up to you. Going back to chat though, sorry. Gakpo and Jota are both out now, but Jota only for one game, and then Gakpo, you don't know how long because obviously there's an international break. He can recover. Has there been actually, an update on Gakpo's injury? I don't think we've heard about a medical update in terms of scans and things like that. So we need to sort of listen to the next medical update because if let's say the update is Gakpo's out for several weeks, 2 of those weeks are going to be international break. One of the weeks is literally going to be, from now until the next fixture, which is going to be a good fixture, but it's still Brighton away. A good fixture in terms of Darwin's minutes, but no confirmation that it's going to be fantastic for Darwin going forwards. Isn't Isaac the better choice? I mean, I just don't like Isaac on West Ham away, for example. I'd probably just go Alvarez because, I mean, Alvarez for me, yes, obviously Isaac's on penalties if Wilson's out, but Wilson's probably coming back after the international break as well, unless I'm wrong, which means you don't really know how long Isaac's going to start consistent games for. And then Alvarez is actually a set-piece taker, which actually adds a lot to his value. Set-piece takers usually have less expected goal involvement from the actual set pieces themselves, but the value it can actually create in terms of FPL is very high compared to just open play expected goal involvement, which actually Julian Alvarez does okay in. He's also a bit more creative, obviously plays for an elite team. You can argue that passing to Holland helps with, points potential. But yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Henry, for gifting 1 membership to the chat. Really appreciate that. And Kai, congratulations. Kai, who I believe you're telling me about Son versus Liverpool. A little bit lucky, I would say, to get that Son goal versus Liverpool. You know, some interesting situations there. Um, but well done as well on your Son haul, I suppose. Going back to chat though, once again, the issue I have is putting so much eggs into one basket, having 3 Spurs and 3 Villa. Look, I think I've never had an issue with putting my eggs in one basket in a team. I think one thing that I would say though is I would not try to triple up in a bad way. So for example, some people would, I don't know, some people were considering going James and Gusto to start the season, but that sort of just blocks one Chelsea spot in the team. Now, obviously, Chelsea is probably a team that, you know, in hindsight, we didn't want to own from the attacking point of view, but actually the defenders have been quite good. So actually only owning one of the Chelsea defenders at one time feels bad. If we go back to Newcastle, for example, I'd probably, if let's say I was certain that Wilson was out for a very long time, then yeah, maybe Isaac makes sense. Then therefore, I'd be quite happy to own maybe at a good time when Newcastle's fixtures are amazing again, which is like Gameweek 15 here, as you can see. I'd probably at that time just think about, you know, maybe just going for Trippier and Burn, or maybe at the time Botman, and then Isaac as well. As far as, you know, even Liverpool, going back to them, I mean, there's been previous times in FPL where I've owned, let's say, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Salah, and another player from this Liverpool team. So I think it can work out just as long as the fixtures are good and you have faith in the team. But just make sure that your triple up is actually like the optimal triple up. And I do think, for example, Cash Watkins Diaby is good. Just like, for example, when people went Alvarez, Holland plus another player, that was good as well. And also the same thing here with Son, Madison plus a defender. I actually prefer Porro if I can squeeze towards Porro, but that's another sort of question. Saka's just too good. You'll keep him. I don't think I'll keep Saka on a wildcard draft, but I definitely, like, I have to think that, or you have to sort of keep in mind having an open path towards Saka in Game Week 10. Like, there's no way you're making a wildcard draft that doesn't have a plan towards going to Saka. Once Liverpool sign a CDM in Jan, I mean, okay, that's January, right? And we can think about Szoboszlai then. Freddie Baker, who do you think will score more points the next 2 weeks? Solanke, Awani, or Alvarez? I'd probably say Alvarez, then Solanke, then Awani. Although I think, look, if you're going for a pure 3-week punt, then obviously Solanke is just better. But the thing about Alvarez too is his best fixture is Game Week 11, right, versus Brighton. So, sorry, what am I doing? Game Week 11 versus Bournemouth. So that fixture is the one you sort of want to own him for. And actually, Brighton at home, I would say, from an attacking point of view, is definitely a green fixture. And United, even, I mean, the way they're playing right now, who knows? Who do you think will score? Sorry, Wilwood says, okay, people talk about Szoboszlai still. Guess you'd want Archer over Mubama on bench. Yeah, I mean, the reason why I say that on an Alvarez draft, if I have 5 rotating defenders, I don't need Mubama or I don't need Archers because I have 5 rotating defenders. Now, if I own the Watkins draft where I own, you know, Taylor from Burnley, he has like little value, and I'd probably be a bit more confident actually owning Archer in that team, just so that I can actually say I've got a stronger bench. But because I already have 5 strong defenders from these teams here, not these 5 defenders, but as you've seen already with some of my defenders previously, those are kind of structures that I prefer as well. Kai says Mateta keeps playing again next. Oh, I mean, Mateta could play. Obviously, it depends on Edouard. Wildcarded at 5 million rank. I wish the best. Honestly, like, this season has been so rough for some people, especially even some very engaged managers. So, yeah. Freddie Baker says... Oh, sorry. I think I already answered that question already. Bowen or Diaby? I think Diaby just because cost saving. But honestly, Bowen has been exceptional. So, it is kind of hard to ignore Bowen right now. Are you okay with going without Saka against Chelsea? Yep, totally okay with it. Would you swap a mid for a striker on your wild card? 3-4-3. I have talked about it a little bit. I think I'm open to a 3-4-3, but I feel like it's very hard for me to just own Madison in a 3-4-3 setup and actually create a team that I'm very happy with. Mohammed, have a good night as well. People have PTSD from selling Holland. I sold Holland twice last season, and I think I actually did okay. Douglas Luiz. I mean, Douglas Luiz is not bad in terms of if you really, really, really need that sort of player at the sort of 5. Isn't he 5.4? 5.4 price point? That's not bad. I think, honestly, if you have really bad transfer value and you're really struggling with rank, I'm not saying this just to make you, for example, to make, your rank worse or anything. But if you have really bad transfer value, I don't think there's a nice way to own Salah Holland effectively. So you have to sort of make a decision. And I think to sort of play actually against the crowd, I think it does make sense to actually go Salah, over Holland. This is fixtures are important. Obviously, Holland is fixture proof, but you also know that Holland would probably score a hat trick easier versus a weaker team. So when it comes down to that, I think this is a decent time to think about Holland-less. As I said, I'd prefer Salah-less. I'd prefer Holland-less over Salah-less, which basically means I prefer Salah only over Holland only. But as I said, this is only if you're in a very bad spot, very tight budget, very low transfer value, and maybe very low rank as well, and you need to sort of climb and find a way to sort of play against the crowd. Getting those Alvarez leaks 5 minutes before deadline and spamming transfers, the website was crashing. Oh, that's tough. You have Anderson, Crystal Palace in your last sub position. Oh no. That's the thing too. I mean, like, look, in FPL, there are so many holes that come from the most outrageous fixtures. Like, I would never have in my life said that Watkins would get 3 goals, 2 assists versus Brighton. Just never in my life. And he did. But it doesn't mean he'll do it again. And he could even struggle with 2 of the relatively okay fixtures next. Holland has been goalless, so he's going to explode soon. Yeah, I mean, look, Holland can explode any time. We all know that. But there are enough good players in this game, I would say, where the risk makes sense over this fixture run. In general, would I advise it if you have healthy transfer value, if you've got a healthy rank? Probably not, because I think you're sort of betting against the crowd in a very, very big way. But as I said, if you're really tight and cash strapped for budget, it might make sense. That one team you third bench playing Man City. Yeah, I mean, that happens, doesn't it? I remember that game as well. I remember everyone actually owned Gallagher at the time, and that was really annoying. You had Anderson, Hwang on your bench in draft. That's so funny. I think I did well in draft this week for once in my life. I've been struggling in draft. Finally, I got a draft win, I think. League fixtures. Yeah, fortunately got a draft win here. I think I got a draft win here as well. League fixtures. Yeah, got a draft win here as well. So I'm climbing up in my draft leagues, Green arrows there. Red arrows in FPL. This is life. Maybe I should just, toss my draft team aside and actually get some FPL points for once. Yeah, it is what it is. I'm pretty happy to sort of go away from some of these players. And who knows? Actually, I'm going to do a small little poll here in terms of who would you prefer. So the question is going to be Watkins versus Alvarez plus 1.1 mim ITB. Because this is sort of the conundrum that I have right now in terms of going forwards, what my plans are. Is already owning Salah reason enough? I think if you own Salah, you probably don't need to wildcard. But actually, a lot of people have really, really bad defenses. Really bad defenses. What is Draft League? It's sort of a different game mode in FPL. It's a different game mode in FPL. So it's a game mode in FPL where you kind of sit with a bunch of friends and you all pick picks, one at a time in a snake draft format. And every week you can kind of have the ability to sign free agents. So for example, you have like a 10-man draft. Everyone picks one player at a time. So for example, the first place draft player gets Holland, the second place player picks Salah, so on and so forth, until you literally pick a full team of 15 players, and then you just compete versus each other in a league format every week. Your game week rank is 8. Oh, nuisance. That's such a dagger. I'm surprised you guys actually like Alvarez this much. Or you guys kind of you guys don't want me to own the Watkins holes. Bowen will outscore Diaby in the next 6. He probably will. Maybe just about. Magic the Gathering? Is that what you're saying? MTG? I think Draft and Magic the Gathering are quite different, unless my understanding of Magic the Gathering is quite wrong. That Sea of Green for Watkins is incredibly tempting. The way I see it is I'm owning Alvarez for the like let's be honest with Alvarez as well. A nailed Alvarez is a monster FPL player. And I think, like, for example, Alvarez is still a top 3 striker in FPL, right? And I think we're a little bit blinded by this guy here, who got 23 points in one game. But he has also been super consistent, and you can't deny that. So maybe, Watkins is very nice as well. Kanji to cash for a -4. I probably wouldn't do that. I am not planning to keep Mbumo. He's sort of just a placeholder for Watkins. But sorry, he's a placeholder for Diaby. But if Diaby's not fit, I think I might have to keep Mbumo in my team. You have Pope, Botman, Trippier, Cash, Udogi, Burke, Areola, Salah, Son, Madison, Diaby, Mbumo, Holland, Mateta, Archer. You -4. Yeah, it is a bit weak in the forward positions. Thoughts on James Ward-Prowse? I think he's a good pick. Do I prefer him over Eze? If I'm honest, no. Just because I'm not certain that James Ward-Prowse is actually on penalties if Ben Rama is off the pitch. And because I don't have any confirmation on that, I think I prefer Eze. Yeah, I mean, all the point comparisons, like, are you, like, let's be honest, like, is Anderson the best defender in FPL? No, he's not. Is Leno the best goalkeeper in FPL? Honestly, no, he's not. Like, when you watch the Chelsea game today, my God, were Fulham horrible. They probably should have conceded 4 goals. And yeah, I mean, he's gotten 1 point. If anything, I think Chelsea could have scored 4. And so, yeah, going forwards, when Fulham have these kind of tough games like Spurs, like Brighton, like Man United, Aston Villa, I mean, like, what are you expecting from this Fulham team? I'm really not expecting anything. Maybe they get a clean sheet versus Sheffield United, fair enough. But then actually going Leno on Wildcard, I'm not sure if I'm up to it. Fulham were so bad in the first half. Honestly, some of the worst defensive football I've seen. We need to temper expectations. It is 100% recency bias, right? Like, it's just one haul. It's a 23-point haul for sure. Yeah. Okay, I see what you mean in terms of the draft. Yeah. I can see what you mean in terms of Anderson playing in a system where he needs to pass a lot, but let's also be honest. He scored 2 goals for a defender, which is also just insane. Like, that's why he's in a league in of his own. And also, Crystal Palace have actually gotten probably a bit more clean sheets than we would have expected, right? So, for example, to get a clean sheet versus Man United, probably unexpected. So, yeah, that 15-pointer sort of makes that sort of whole world of difference compared to, like, all the other picks so far. Nothing wrong with going off topic. No, but anyways, I appreciate you guys and your discussions here. It's nice to actually have a good review stream. Have I considered Darwin? Not at all, really. I'm unsure about his minutes because I think he can lose his minutes coming back from the international break. Obviously, you can say the same for Julian Alvarez, but the difference is with Julian Alvarez, this City team 100% needs Julian Alvarez, whereas I don't think Darwin is close to the same sort of essential player, and Jota will be back for Gameweek 9. So overperforming his NPXG by 1.4, scored 2 goals. Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's a center back. Like, what are we expecting from him? If anything, Cash has been underperforming. I know Chilwell has too, but he doesn't even play football right now. Mr. V says, maybe you should drop Salah. The thing is, I'm actually going to be captaining Salah a lot of these weeks, Mr. V. So I kind of need to be doubling Salah points at various occasions. So I'm not going to be dropping Salah. Might as well get Chukwuemeka instead of Nakamba. Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not going 3-4-3, my friends. And I'm not thinking of keeping Mbumo. I'm going Diaby. Before the season, everyone said Alvarez is too cheap, waiting for a Holland injury. See, the thing is, that's crazy, right? Because, yeah, I would have said from the eye test last season that Julian Alvarez could not play in the sort of pockets, as a KDB replacement. But he's come back this season, and he's been insane. And even Pep has said the same thing, where he's better at sort of understanding how to play within the pockets. And he is literally probably their best player right now. So, yeah, I know Sterling didn't start because he had an illness for the last 3 days. Pochettino said that he wasn't in training, but obviously, look, I mean, I'm not that confident in Chelsea's attack as it is. I think Fulham were just terrible in the first half. How come I picked Lamptey? No, just because I think Lamptey will probably get a price rise. This is not my real draft, guys. This is just to capture price rises and falls. And Boomer will never be essential. I mean, how can we say that though? How can we? I don't think we should change our minds on picks like that quickly. He could have got a penalty this week, and sometimes penalty takers are sort of game breaking, in that sense. Yeah, I think Watkins is not 1 million better than Alvarez, and I do really like the upgrades that I get to make. When I don't go for a Watkins draft as well. But it's very close, as you can see, which is why my drafts, like, in my mind, they're so close. Gabriel over Esteban in a wild card, I would probably do that because I'm not sure if Esteban will play as many games as we think he will, based on, let's say, our expectations in Game Week 1. What do you think makes it worthy to wild card? All right, I mean, let's have a look at my team. So I think Pickford's, for mental health reasons, good to wild card out. Saliba, I think good to wild card out because I'm not going to play him for the next 2 games and I want to save up some money so I can actually upgrade in other positions. Sterling, okay, fine. There's one good game versus Burnley, but it's actually very awkward, right? Because I only had one free transfer. I had Saka, I had Rashford, I had Fernandes, I had Sterling and Bumo. So I probably would want to go Saka to Son, but then actually still owning Rashford is sort of a little bit of a headache, particularly when I actually want to have Madison as well. And I actually see it as a nice chance to go from Udogi to Porro, which I think is an upgrade. Estupiñán I'd like to sort of get rid of. And as you can see as well, I mean, look, my team honestly would have been okay going forwards from Game Weeks 9 and 10. So actually the biggest thing that I was sort of realizing was that there's a lot of price pressure right now. So when I wildcarded, Rashford was set to fall, Salah was set to rise, Son was set to rise, and I was calculating how I would create a Salah Holland draft. And as you guys saw as well just now when I was creating my drafts, a lot of the in the bank value was like 0.4, 0.3, or even 0.1. So obviously with all these price rises and falls, if I didn't capture them, by the time Game Week 10 rolls around and I changed, let's say, Saka, I changed Son and Madison into Odegaard and Saka, which will, I mean, if Saka gets a price fall, those 2 pairs in isolation will cost 17.1, the Spurs pair and the Arsenal pair. So when I was calculating for my future wildcard draft in Game Week 10, if I continue to take price rises, let's say Man United blank again versus Brentford, right? Which is very, very possible, let's be honest. Fernandes will definitely fall. Rashford will fall again. Dallo won't fall. But I would be taking extreme price pressure there. Sterling is actually not close to a fall because I think he's close to 1 fall, but he's 7.1, so it's fine. So that's another thing. Saka would have been an additional price fall, and I would be doing an early transfer to Son, which would put me in an unhealthy position. And then Estupiñán as well, debatable whether he continues to start. And just saw it as a good time to wild card. I also have Taylor over Archer, which is, for example, another transfer luxury that I would like to make ideally. And I think also I've kind of, for example, enjoyed the cash cow that's been Trippier. I think Trippier can easily get, for example, another 12-pointer in the Crystal Palace game. Maybe he gets 12 pointers for the rest of the season and I'll look like an idiot. But I also think that I kind of cashed in for Trippier's 2 best fixtures from a clean sheet point of view. Basically 50% clean sheet probability for the last 2 weeks back to back. And, he managed to max out on them. I don't see the same sort of value like going into this sort of run of fixtures. And that's all I'm saying. And so, yeah, wanted to make these kind of transfers. And mostly, as I said, it was sort of stimulated by price pressure. So I really wanted to get the Salah and Holland structure in place. And, I think because I'm not only factoring Game Week 8 price rises and falls, but once 8 and 9 actually happen, I probably would have lost maybe 0.4 to 0.5 of transfer value. Because by next deadline, it's very likely that Son, if, for example, we get healthy news that Son starts, he could rise overnight in Game Week 7. Madison as well could rise again, even though I think he's actually closer to a fall. Nope, Madison's actually so close to another price rise. This is how insane FPL is. So Madison's close. Even someone like Burn, who, if I want depth for Newcastle, if he's going to price rise again, so that's something I can't afford in the future. And Cash as well, he's getting price rises as well. So it's kind of crazy how much price pressure there was in Game Week 8. I was, as I said, if you watch my previous videos, I was planning for Game Week 10, but the price pressure was honestly too much. And I actually regret not being able to do something like Taylor to Morris, which is basically my biggest regret in Game Week 7, and probably why I think I had a bad game week. Because I think if I go Morris, I definitely wouldn't have captained him. I probably would have just gotten, there was a 4-point difference between Dallo and Estupiñán, so I got saved from that. I would have not played Sterling, though, so that's the difference. So then I would have played probably Morris, who's on 8 points, I believe, so far. Let's say he gets appearance points, so that's 10 points. So the swing would have probably been 6 points, which is not too bad. I probably would still have a red arrow at the end of the day, but it is what it is. So obviously you try to maximize every single point in FPL. And so sad that I didn't do that, but it is what it is. TV versus information is the issue right now. I agree with that, but I mean, okay, how many injuries did we have last international break? I mean, historically, I think a lot of people just get gaslighted by international breaks. I will have one additional transfer, and I'm the type of manager who has usually 14 to 15 playing players. So it shouldn't affect me too much, is all I'm trying to say. But yeah, I think also if you didn't capture all the price rises so far, I probably wouldn't wildcard in game week 8, if that makes sense. I don't like the next two West Ham fixtures either, Jerome. I think they're actually bad. Thank you, Nuisance, as well. Hope you're doing well. Do you think they should adjust how they? I think there should be more transparency in terms of price rises and falls, and also, I think I don't like how the game encourages sort of capturing price rises and falls like incessantly, and I think it is what it is isn't it? Like as a manager, I think there's probably a lesson learned where as we have more casuals that are engaged, that are trying to sort of chase points, but also chase points in a very logical way, it's very tough, right, to actually get all the players you want. So maybe next year I need to pay a bit more attention to price, if I'm honest. I don't really know. I think I've been fortunate because I have a good transfer value team. You want best wildcard? I've made a wildcard video if you want to have a look at it. Baltimore's Hall incoming. He probably could. I'd probably keep Diaby 100% if you have Diaby right now. I don't see the need to go into Bowen immediately. But yeah, I think that's it for my stream, guys. So thank you guys so much for watching. In terms of price rises and falls, let's just quickly refresh that page. So Burn, Trippier, Bowen, Turner probably set to rise. I don't think Turner's going to rise. I think that's just wild card sort of price pressure. Saka, Estupiñán set to fall. Chilwell set to fall. None of these players actually fell last night, and these were all three of the players who were set to fall yesterday. So I don't think get your hopes up in terms of all these falls, but it could happen. Archer definitely going to be wild card price pressure. Madison probably still wild card price pressure, but Madison will 100% rise, I think, before next week. It's still Luton Town, and even Son probably will get a double rise. I mean, Son is already, my God, Son is so close to a second rise. That is mental. Dean is also a good pick. I think so, but, you know, you have to deal with Moreno, whereas Cash isn't really dealing with anyone right now. But yeah, cheers to everyone as well on the stream. And yeah, I'll take care. You're loving Trippier. I think that makes sense. I mean, I've enjoyed Trippier, but I think I'm gonna have to say goodbye to Trippier. Thanks for all you guys for listening. If you guys can like and subscribe, that would be lovely. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.